Hey everybody. So yeah, just got done watching yesterday's video. And as you can see, I think 2 days ago, the way it was working this way, right? The way if you look at here, let me pull this up, OBS. If you sort of look at the way this is moving, or even, I know, actually, I guess now I know it's going to happen. Like you can see it, right? So it's going to be in the recording, this sort of jerkiness. And I think like on Friday, I had this jerkiness issue. And then Friday, maybe it was Thursday. And then I think on Friday, like I literally had to start and have it do an update, shut down, have it restart. And then when it restarted, it did an update and shut down, restart, and it did an update. And the OS just kept trying to update itself, and it finally succeeded. And if you look at yesterday's video, the jerkiness sort of went away. And then last night it asked to do another update, and it did an update. And now this morning, now the jerkiness is back. So I'm pretty confident that it has something to do with the Windows update that's happening. Now, in my last video, I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT just gave me a bunch of random possible things to try, which I don't think were very useful or have any chance in heck of being useful. I think this is a foundational OS issue. So I'm going to do like I have been until this sort of resolves itself or a solution kind of comes to light. I'm going to deactivate this thing and then reactivate it at the end because I do think it is a bit of a distraction. Yesterday, me and my wife went to a Honda dealership and we bought a minivan. Or at least we got a deal for a minivan, and we brought home the minivan, and we left our Camry. And so I think they've definitely given us a strong indication that we have a deal. Like the deal is done. We have contracts. We have literally giant folders full of papers and signatures and all kinds of stuff. And we're supposed to bring the title in because we didn't have the title. We're supposed to bring the title in on Monday and all that. But when I did sell cars for just literally for 3 weeks in the 1980s, I did observe situations where people, especially on the weekends, like on Saturday night, would go and they'd work out a deal, and then when they came back on Monday, they would find out that the deal had fallen through. There had even been some instances where people had a vehicle for 2 or 3 weeks, and then when they came back, the vehicle was the deal fell through. And what was really bad is about some of them is that they had trade-ins, and the trade-ins were already gone. So they went from having a car to not having a car, and then no way of getting a car. And I think they got a pretty sweetheart deal on the trade-in. They came way down off on the price of the minivan, and then they made a pretty sweetheart deal. So if the deal fell through and we couldn't get our trade-in back, that would be really, really bad. I don't know exactly how that will all work out. So I definitely wanted to kind of talk through it because it is sort of high on my list of things to think about right now. Anyway, so here we are. Okay, so I have this drop up. And it was funny because Rhett got really animated yesterday in yesterday's video, and now she did it again, and she was pretty quiet in the last video I did for the space and time, but now she's gotten pretty active in this one. And I think what provoked her was listening to herself yesterday. And yeah, I don't know if she brings value. It's really hard to tell. She probably doesn't. She's probably takes away from the video, but I sort of am, I guess what you would call multitasking. I'm sort of giving her the attention and the sort of the stimulation that she needs to be sort of a happy animal, and making these videos at the same time. And yeah, she may be not helping. But yesterday, so we added this table and we added these labels, and we might end up undoing that because what we need is a drop down and like something that sort of forces a number and probably doesn't allow anything, like it forces a number that's greater than zero. And I believe that probably the easiest way to do that will be to with responsive forms. So basically what happens is we have a bunch of different technologies going here. And one technology is Angular material. And the other is going to be reactive forms, not responsive, but reactive forms. And those are two different technologies. And they're from the same organization. They're both from Google, but one is from the material team and one is from a different team. And I don't know, probably the core, Angular core team. So that's sort of where things get confusing. Now, this is also sort of the core where things get really confusing in the industry. When you're talking to a recruiter or when a recruiter's talking to you, they are likely extraordinarily confused by the word React. And that's because when you're talking about React, when they're saying React, when you say React, you're talking about the framework. There's a React framework that was created by Facebook or Meta. They were called Facebook when they created it, and that is React. There's also a concept called reactive programming, which is something that is mostly, I think, maybe even 100% associated with RxJS, another library called RxJS. And RxJS is heavily, heavily used in Angular, but it's also usually used with React as well. So that really confuses recruiters, and most recruiters say that they really want to understand it, but then they just sort of dip the minute you start explaining it to them. So that is that. And neither of those have anything to do with reactive forms. Reactive forms is a whole different concept on a whole system that's designed around creating form elements that give you a lot of control over the forms and what is rendered, what can be entered, and how it communicates changes outside. That's reactive forms. That has nothing to do with React, the framework designed by Facebook, or reactive programming, which is the programming language which is programming using the RxJS library. This is something different. And not only that, but we're not even going to do that now. We are going to do Angular material, which is yet another thing. And so we're going to go to Angular material website, Angular material, and we're going to go to I don't know, I guess we should click on form filled and let's just see what we have. I know there's two things. Yeah, so this select, yeah, this is exactly what, so we want an input, and that input is going to have a number, is where we're going to put the number of possible responses, and a select, which is going to let us select what language we want. And now let's go ahead and let's look down here, because this stuff changes. So it's got really cool things, right? Like you could put little smiley faces, you could put hints and all that. And this is what is called, this whole sort of thing is another sort of word that they quite often use in, this is opinionated. It's highly, highly opinionated. When you do map form fields and you're doing stuff like this, Angular expects you to do it a certain way. They expect you to do it the way they want you to do it. That's absolutely expected. So that is 180 degrees away from I always have a hard time with it because it's a Bootstrap. I always have a hard time with the name Bootstrap for the CSS framework, because that does not seem like the right name. But anyways, for Bootstrap, it's highly unopinionated. They just give you a bunch of sort of features and then they're like, hey, you use them how you want to use them. That is not this. And since these are both kind of doing sort of the same thing, people expect this to not be opinionated. No, it is super opinionated. If you change, if your people say, oh, I want this to be bigger, you're likely to screw everything up. If you change something kind of like that in Bootstrap, you're likely not to screw everything up. These people, the people who set this stuff up, they assume that you're not going to mess with the layout of things, so that as like when you start having sort of prefixes and little numbers up here and stuff like that, when all that stuff starts happening, that you'll be able to, everything will just fit just perfectly. And if you monkey around and you decide, oh, okay, I'm going to make this text bigger, or I'm going to make certain changes, I'm going to change the way this works. I'm, you know, then what happens is, then like in other components, like let's see if we can find one, like in autocomplete, you may come in here and you might be like, wait, why doesn't this go to the right spot? Why isn't, like if you, like a thing I've seen quite often is where they'll be like, oh, I want this text bigger and I want a signee up here. And that has a very strong possibility of like totally messing up something like this. Totally messing up. Let's go to a different component. And this is not me. I'm just a messenger. Like my son is an attorney. I say that all the time because I'm super proud. I'm a proud papa. And he says that like he'll talk to people and he'll explain the law, and then they get really mad at him. And he's like, I did not make this law. This is not how I want. Let's see in this table if they have an example. So like if we go to examples, I feel like there's, like you might go, yeah, let's go to, click on add data. Okay, they just add one. So sometimes you'll have like tables that sort of open up into other things. Yeah, like this is a good example. And then sometimes there's like forms in there. Let's see if we can find one. Like you might have something that sort of adds like this kind of thing, and like suddenly it's like you have a form in here, and then you've changed the way that your management has, or some designers made you change the way it works, and now next thing you know, like none of these things fit together anymore, and it all falls apart. And that's usually extremely like, oh yeah, this is probably a really good example. Like this is kind of probably assuming that things, like if you have, like let's say you made the text underneath there bigger, it could, like the hint text, it could not, like they've got all that stuff just barely, or it's all fitting together, just super opinionated. So you do not want, if you do not have to, you don't want to mess with the styling. There's certain aspects of the styling that are perfectly fine to mess with, but you really want to put a lot of thought into making changes, because it can really screw things up. It can make your code almost impossible to maintain. But what's even worse is and I cannot tell you how many places I've worked where this is the reason they can't do upgrades. And when you can't do upgrades, sooner or later, like if you can't upgrade your code, you're kind of the equivalent to like a deer in the wild that's been hit by an arrow, and the hunter is just slowly following behind. I mean, if you can't do any upgrades, you're bleeding out, and you're not long. You won't be able to function very long. So that is my strong warning in this, is to not mess around with the styles if at all possible of this. But let me hit back at, because I kind of want to go back to what we had before. That was really good. I think it was this one, right? No, that was autocomplete. Yeah, this one. So yeah, this is what we want, one of these, and we want one of these. All right, let's try it. Give her a shot. Let her rip. Um, okay, so let's first look at our TypeScript and see what our. So it looks like we need these 3 imports. Okay, and let's go back over here, and we want to look at our discrete settings dialog. And we want to go over here, and we want to get the right imports. I don't know, maybe we don't want to get the right imports. Maybe we want to like let it break. HTML. Just, I mean, like, I think there might be some value to going through the process of watching it break. And since we're in a sort of a low stress situation, it would be kind of nice to just sort of go through the process of it breaking, like kind of just go through the standard non-expert Angular material developer experience. Okay, so this is the first thing. So we're going to have a problem with the form field and the label. And I guess so that was our max alternatives. Let's go ahead and get the other one going too. And normally I don't like to do things this way. Like I like to sort of do things in a, like the same, like fix that before I move on to the next thing. But I've done this a million times now. And I guess I'm hoping that to use this as an opportunity to learn something, kind of get a better observation of things. And so one thing I do want to say is I know that there are certain situations where I see an error because it says that I can't have a map form field that's not in a form. But as you notice, like their HTML here, it's not in a form. So I'm sort of on I got my head on a swivel, and I do want to look at the CSS. So I don't know how. I don't think this is important. I think this is just so that these 3 stand on top of each other, so they don't go sideways. That they don't end up like going across like this. That they're vertically in a column. So I'm hoping that none of those matter. All right, so now I think to get all 3 of those working, we need the mat form field module, the mat input module, and the mat select module. So I'm just going to grab all 3 of those. And it would actually be interesting to see what happens if you don't have any, like, do you need all 3 of them? Or would like the mat select also have what's in the mat input? And then this is always interesting to me because it seems like it should know. Like like if it's in the core, it can figure it out. Quite often it'll actually grab the wrong one, but it can figure it out usually. So we're going to grab this. And I'm confident we do not need this change detection strategy. And we already have component. Okay, so now let's hit save. I think we're gonna need a full reload for this. There was a time when you added imports that you pretty much needed to do a full restart, and that has been one of the major improvements. And we didn't actually save this. So let's just see if this builds. So we're not going to have anything because we didn't save the HTML. The save button. Now that path that I just went on is not like I don't think I think I've learned from personal experience that path is a good path. That it's not the only path forward, and I think a lot of the other paths forward end up in tiers. So as you see, that it's big. It's big. And I would normally want to sort of make it smaller. I don't like how big it is, but I've touched that fire too many times. Um, so I don't like the labels. And then um, I don't, and then I don't know that we need the labels. Um, so I'm gonna kill this and bring it back. So like I think I could just say language and max alternative right here. And I will definitely be the first one to tell you that I do not, and I guess I don't need the colon, that I am not an expert in Angular material. And but I will also be the first one to tell you that I have spent many, many, many hours trying to get these things to work. And I could tell you that, oh yeah, I feel like that looks so good. This is this is sort of the life of experience of using Angular material, where like you're just like, God, that is just beautiful. Like some genius just absolutely put that together to just like it just fits. It just looks good. It looks good. But but things go off the rails pretty quick. When you're doing this, and like if you step off, like I mean it is just really a there's just a lot. um and I guess language doesn't make that. And so like yeah, so let's say this is one. See, that's so nice. And then if we had English already preset, that would be good too. um so and I do think that like this is a great stopping point. Like um, there's a lot like that is what we just went through is probably like one of the most difficult things in software. I mean, it's so simple when you know how to do it. Hey, look at that. My camera has fixed itself. Um, it's so simple when you kind of go down the path in the in sort of that way, the way I just did it. And it is just an absolute nightmare when you don't go through the path the way I just did it. The errors, or at least historically, like in my personal experience, there's just been like a lot of errors that you don't necessarily um, want. And I do think that once this is actually selected to begin with, and then this is where I get notoriously, we won't have any, I'm pretty sure, where you get that console log error that just drives me nuts, where it says the value updated before blah blah blah. So but ideally what I would want to have right now is en dash us, and I think it's 27 being displayed here. And I would want this input, and maybe that's where it's going to happen. So when I go to implement reactive forms, that's when this will all go, like then I'll start getting a really weird error saying that it has to be inside of a form. I mean, it has to be inside of a form tag. Um, and and that's that. And then I don't even know, like, and I think we do want that. We do want this to be a reactive form, because then just like a lot of things are easier to like when it comes to like forcing this guy to be a number. It's just going to be a lot easier. And I think the biggest reason why I want to do that, why I want to spend the time to set up reactive forms and all that, is because this may be like the easiest sort of example that I've ever had the opportunity to build. Generally, when people need reactive forms, it's kind of like things are pretty complicated. That's why you would use reactive forms. But the problem is that you never really get to learn it easy, and this is going to be my opportunity to learn this easy. Um, and yeah. So, anyways, I am definitely using this opportunity as my opportunity to sort of get a better grasp of Angular material and reactive forms and the way they interact with each other, and a little bit better grasp of like how can I even talk about the whole concept of React, reactive development, and reactive forms in such a way that it doesn't like literally cause anyone who is not a developer, and even most developers, to just absolutely just like disconnect from reality the second you start talking about it. Um, yeah, it's a real shame. It's a real shame. I mean, like I was talking to this computer programmer. He is a computer programmer. He is the big shot software developer, and we're talking, and he's just like, yeah, everything is reactive now. And I was like, all right, what are you talking about? And he's like, like you go and you click on something and it reacts. Like that was this, and this dude was like the CIO or director of freaking software development for some company that's like freaking Pegasus or Unicorn or whatever. And it's just like, are you shitting me? Like that's what you think reactive means? Like you're a million miles off. I didn't say that to him because one thing, he was completely wrecked. He was so drunk. But other thing is like once I started saying, well, React is a framework that Facebook created, and he's just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, they invented reactive development and reactive forms. I was like, well, reactive development is like stuff that RxJS, like if you're using the RxJS library, then that really isn't, they use that a lot. A lot of React developers that use the React framework by Facebook use RxJS a lot, but they're not exactly the same. Oh yeah, no, obviously, yeah, yeah, everyone knows that. But obviously the Facebook created the reactive forms, and I was like, as far as I understand, reactive forms is an Angular thing. And so the thing is like this guy, like they had some big Salesforce.com implementation, and so obviously you're going to use something that creates components. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense that they would use React because they're not trying to rewrite the entire application. They're trying now if Angular can really ever get the Angular elements, and I don't really know what the problems with Angular elements are. I really thought when they first rolled it out, that was it. Like it was over. It was over for Facebook. I mean for React. But my understanding is that first sort of rollout of Angular elements, like the actual web components that it generated, were way too big, way, way, way too big. So because they basically, I believe, had like the whole Angular core in there, and then like I think anytime anyone says like, can we make like a mini Angular core for that's just for web elements, it just has the stuff, they automatically sort of throw that concept out because they're like, no, we're going to make the core itself smaller for everybody, and it's just like, yeah, like me, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's going to be way, way harder than creating like a core that just supports anything that web components supports. But actually don't know that. I'm kind of talking out of school there. I don't know. I don't know what the architecture behind the scenes of Angular is. Um, I would love to actually be able to have a conversation with someone like that. That I know, my understanding is the majority of people that do majority of work on Angular, like the Angular core and all that, are not and are not Google employees. They're mostly do open source. So maybe I should spend some time and try to kind of find somebody, because I bet you that person, those people are probably super, super cool and happy to talk about, happy that anyone wants to listen to what they have to say about the way things work behind the scenes. But anyways, yeah, so um, yeah, the way it would be nice if Angular would create, with their Angular elements, would create like a genuine, a really, really effective web module or web component generating scheme that is, along the lines of Stencil and or Facebook or React or something like that, where it creates really cool components that just like work everywhere, are easy to maintain, and all that. Honestly, that's how I would actually like, if I ever were to work in a place where we had like a big Angular application that we want to be able to maintain over time. I think I would want like an application that sort of just has modules. I don't think modules will ever be gone, but modules and web components, and then or maybe routing and web components, and then all you, like every single thing in there is a web component, and we know like what version of Angular that web component was created in, and then it would be upgraded as necessary. So like let's say you had a Angular 7, let's say Angular Elements came out in Angular 16, I think, and then you built like a really cool sort of drop down that handles your whatever, and then some new thing comes out and you want to, and then you make a decision like, okay, so do we want to replace our web component and create a new one in like the latest Angular, or can we upgrade our existing one? And all you're doing is dealing with at the component level versions of Angular. Now you'd have to be super, super organized for that, right? And you don't meet a lot of developers and people in development that are super, super organized. But yeah, if you had like, you would definitely need a certain kind of person that's ultra organized, that understands how all the pieces. But that's also another thing, is like a lot of very high end software development is like everything has to be perfect. Like everything has to be validated and tested and all that. And so if you have these components that are already super validated and tested, and you have like the routing system, like the validation and testing part, all the things would be probably a lot faster, if assuming everyone does what they're supposed to do. Yeah, because then like let's say you have your end-to-end testing and it knows how to test a specific component, you still have that end-to-end testing, and then if you choose to use that component in a different place, you still have the end-to-end testing for that. So because there are like a lot of companies that like they sell different versions of their software to lots of different places, and yeah, breaking that down into components is probably going to be the ideal way to go. But anyways, I'm really glad that my camera started working right. I cannot conceive of what happened. I did not have a Windows update since the last time, the beginning of this video, when I started this stuff. So geez, but I mean, everything is so remote now, and this has been like the best actual application to sort of demonstrate that, right? Because when we go like thing, and then yeah, now thing comes up at 25% as the first thing, when yesterday thing came up. Like why is something at 25% sitting first? Why was that the first one today, when yesterday it kind of worked? Like everything, see, this whole thing is working differently today than it was working yesterday, right? This whole thing, right? So let's do it again. Thing. Now there's only 5, so it'll be very interesting. And we had THYNG yesterday. Like why would THY, and how in the world did it get Bing in this one? That's weird, right? And I don't even think, was Bing even one of these? Yeah, so like I said the same thing 2 times in a row. And oh my gosh, thing isn't even one of these. Okay, let's try this again. Thing. Okay, and we got 7 this time. And thing is first. So I feel like this, literally the way this API works is different every day, maybe even every hour. And why it's different, I don't know. Why this camera works different. At the beginning of this video, it was all jerky and all that. Like, I don't know. But I do know that this computer is online and it's connected to the internet. So, you know, that whatever it may be using different, it's probably using different resources, remote resources. It wouldn't surprise me if, like, literally after every word I say, there's some sort of remote call and things are changing. Um, let's try that. Things are changing. So only 199%. Things are singing. Only 199%. So yeah, I don't know. Don't know. What was the other one? Was a what? What? 6. And see, like, every single one of these is the same word. The same word. And they're all exactly 78.4%, which is another really strange thing. But it did return, like, the most common English spelling of this word that all of these stand for. You know, and then, like, tomorrow, it's a very good chance that WHT will be the first one up there or something, or WWAT with a capital W will be the very first one. And then that's very, very likely to work completely different on Android and in Apple. And this is domain knowledge, and these sorts of things are the kind of things that A, you need to know about, but B, will make it very difficult to sell this technology to someone. So, like, let's say we were trying to get together and sell this, but it could also be that if you give it a library and that library only has the word what, it doesn't have any of these other things, that maybe you can get a lot more reliable results for an actual application, because there are a lot of voice applications that could really benefit from this sort of technology, and all that. So anyways, yeah, I know I did ramble. I don't know why Rhett let me ramble, but she did. I definitely do. I am glad that we got to spend some time talking about this, this actual voice API thing. I think that is going to be sort of the probably, like, every single time, I feel like every 3 years as a software developer, the actual challenge that you're trying to solve is it shifts. And I think that what we are is we're getting a peak of probably what's going to be the biggest challenge for the next 3 years. And that biggest challenge is that trying to get some sort of reliability out of the software that we're using. That used to be sort of baked in. Like, if you wrote software, it would act the same way every time over and over again. And that is absolutely not the way it works now. It seems like you can write some software and it's that same code can act a totally different way every single day. And that is like, and for every single person. So you could end up with, like, literally 100 million, your software out to 100 million different people, and that software is behaving differently for every individual person. And trying to debug stuff like that is going to be damn near impossible. So, that's probably the big challenge. It'll be very interesting to see what the big solution for that ends up being. Like, it's so exciting because, like, there's just no telling. There's absolutely no telling what that solution is going to be that sort of locks that down. Like, I remember when the big problem was asynchronous coding, right? Like, we had this XML, HTTP requests, XML, and then like different codes that were in there. And for code 4, you did this, and for code 5, you did that. And then for long, all we just did is like async await or blah, 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 dot then. We promises. And then next thing you know, came up with reactive coding, which is kind of what got me going all on this tangent to begin with. And then, like we just eventually evolved. And then what's really interesting is like all of the non-programming professions are starting to require programming. And so they're all starting to learn these little logics and how to do loops and decision trees and stuff like that. And they're learning that, but like they're all going to hit the async. Okay, how do you handle asynchronous things? Like, and it's just going to be so interesting to see if, like, do they use async await? Do they use promises? Do they use subscriptions? Do they use signals? I mean, like, how are they gonna how are Excel programmers accountant programmers going to deal with asynchronous things? That's going to be fascinating, and I'm so glad that I have a son that is going into accounting, because I can't wait to hear how he describes sort of the progress of that. And then I have my other son that's an attorney, and I'll hear what his progress is. And I have a daughter who's like big into sales, and it'll be interesting to hear like when she's talking about stuff like what sort of challenges they're running on. And I'll bet you I'll be like, oh shit, so yeah, no, they are trying to figure out a language to describe asynchronicity. Like, and it'll be interesting to see how all these different professions and all that deal with all that. Anyways, I'm glad my camera's working. And I'm glad I captured, like, I am so glad. I think one of the hardest things also as just a modern human being is not to feel like insane. Like, things work. Like, I went to my friend's house, and we decided to sit in front of we didn't actually watch anything on Netflix, but they brought Netflix up. And then I was just fascinated because I was just watching every like aspect of what their Netflix account looked like. And I got so visibly tilted because their top 10 of movies that day was different than my top 10 of movies at my house. And I was like, those MFers. So yeah, I am not seeing the top 10 of movies on Netflix when I see top 10. I'm seeing what Netflix wants me to think the top 10 movies are, which I just don't know about the morality of that. It just seems like that's not appropriate. But it is important to not assume like things. Like that is probably also, like, as a human, we can't assume anything that like right now we bought the minivan. We can't really assume that that deal is a deal until we've actually gotten our first bill. Once we've gotten a bill from the bank, we actually have a deal. But until then, we don't have a deal. And they and then the fact that we have a child who's an attorney increases the chances that they won't do anything naughty, right? Like they won't try to take advantage of us because they know, well, we do have legal representation that won't cost us more than it's worth fighting for. The fact that my wife is a TikTok celebrity and can turn 30,000 people on them in a minute, also probably gives us a better chance that they're not going to try some kind of tomfoolery. So, that's that's a thing, and that's just the reality. Like, it sucks that it's like that, but your situation, the fact that I have a YouTube show and 12 people will know that dealership did me dirty, makes a difference. I do know that once I worked for a place where they did like call center stuff, and that they did have the ability, like when you call a call center and they hear your voice, they can figure out what your social footprint is, and the the level of what the call center person could do for you was directly related to your social footprint. So if you had the ability to blast that they did you dirty, they were much less likely to do you dirty. If you're just like a person with no social media or anything like that, then they felt like they could just do whatever you want. They basically respond. We didn't have any control. They responded to the information that was in front of them. So like we're all living like we're one person, and my daughter has a humongous social footprint. So a lot of times my wife would call and want something. She would felt like she needed like some resolution to something, and she would call, and they'd just be like, "Yeah, screw off, lady." And then my daughter would literally call 2 minutes later, and they give her whatever she wants, and that was because she had like 10,000 friends on Facebook, and she had an enormous LinkedIn, and she had all these things, and they saw that, and then they would give her what she wants. My wife would call, and they would not give her what she wants because she didn't have this social footprint. Now my wife gets whatever she wants usually because when she calls, they go, "Oh shit," because she's got these, literally between all of the social medias, like over 100,000 people that she can reach. So and then that's like the other thing is this is like, locally she has so many people that she's connected to. As a matter of fact, yesterday we went to Cracker Barrel, and then as we were leaving, the lady that was checking us out was like, "Oh my God, are you on TikTok tour?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And they were like talking, and then she's like, "Can I get a selfie with you?" and all that. And that is not that unusual. That happens every once in a while, but it's happening more and more often. So like her experience at places is different than my experience at places because I have 12 people on YouTube that watch me, and I don't think they're in the United States, so I don't think that the Honda dealership is too worried about whether somebody in there. Although they did mention that probably one of their biggest customer bases are IT people from India. So I guess they don't want to mess that up. But anyways, I have rambled on. I have a lot of time. It is high noon, and me and my wife are free to do whatever we please until noon, and it is very wet outside, so I can't really do any of my outside work that I would typically do. But happy coding, everybody. Bye.